My guest today is a powerful speaker, spiritual teacher, and retreat leader who brings both heart and hustle to the healing journey. With over 22 years as an entrepreneur and 12 years as a spiritual mentor, her story is one of profound transformation. She went from being a struggling single mum to building a multiple six-figure business doing what she loves. And now she helps others do the same. Her mission is to empower leaders to step into their next level of visibility and impact while creating more freedom, abundance, and joy in the process. Beyond the titles and the teachings, she is a devoted mother, and she finds deep personal renewal swimming with wild dolphins off the coast of Kona, Hawaii, an experience she calls both playful and profoundly spiritual. This is an enriching episode and it's going to expand you. So let's dive in. Enjoy. Hello, listeners. Thanks for joining another episode of the Skin I'm In podcast. I'm your host, Chanel, and this is a place where women can tune in to gain peace through clarity, purpose through inspiration, and the permission to be themselves through the stories of other women. If you're enjoying these episodes so far, click the like, share, and subscribe button so that more women like you can be positively impacted by the stories in this podcast. Welcome to the Skin I'm In podcast, Jen. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's wonderful to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, I cannot wait to unpack some of your life experiences. Can we please just start with the dolphins? This is my dream. Talk to me about swimming with wild dolphins in Hawaii.
Yes, this is my favorite thing in life, I think. I've been fortunate to do probably about close to 45 different wild.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It started in 2009. It was my very first time I ever saw a spiritual retreat, and it was all about swimming with the wild dolphins. I'm like, I felt my whole body just begin tingling inside and out. I'm like, I have to go. And swimming with the dolphins is so magical. I mean, every single swim is different. They are amazing healers. They're extremely intuitive and telepathic. You know, it's like you can have every time I would go about once a year for my birthday and we would swim with them. And each time it's like we would have our intentions and that trip would, it's like they would mirror that. They were able to mirror that. Their energy is just playful and loving. There's so much healing around just community and love, and being in the present moment with them is always a powerful lesson. But they're also powerful healers. I mean, I've had times where they've taken me to the side and done their sonar clicking and just kind of aligned my chakras and had very clear telepathic communications of exactly what my personal intention was going into the water. So they're just extremely in tune and magical and playful and fun. And yes, I highly recommend it if you can find a place that still offers it.
I was going to say, because I think it's pretty much illegal everywhere around where I live. And I'm like, look, I've always been the kind of person that questions when something's, been like when what I feel like is a right as humans is taken away from us, and swimming with wild animals. I mean, especially dolphins. It's not like you hear dolphin attacks very often. And I just thought, oh, I would love to do that one day. I've heard it is absolutely magical. And so when I saw that you did that, I was like, oh, my heart just sang. I'm like, there's still somewhere in the world I can do this. One of these days I'm going to have to do it.
Actually, I'm looking into doing a retreat in about a year from now. So you have to keep your eyes peeled because there is a place. I'm going to go check it out this June in the Red Sea in Egypt, actually. And in
Wow.
they still allow. So there are a few places still that
I
do it.
wouldn't even think that there are dolphins out there.
Yeah, I know. And it feels very connected to Atlantis out there too, the vibration of the Atlantis. So it's different energy than I've been, because I feel like Hawaii and Kona, where I just love so much and where I've normally swam, is more like that Lemurian type energy. And so it's interesting. I'm very excited to see how that is. I'm going to experience it for the first time in just a couple months.
Well, I'm definitely keeping an eye out for that. In a year's time, I can plan for that
Yeah,
for sure.
right. Like I have to find a place, and they're the playful spinner dolphins, which are my favorite. I mean, there's many different types of dolphins, and they all have their own personalities, but they're just so playful and loving.
You have been an entrepreneur for 2 decades. What was the moment that, cracked you open spiritually and led you to become a mentor for others?
Well, it was my own journey, right? I mean, when I first, like now, I like to say my life is a spiritual retreat, and I feel so blessed to be doing what I do, and considering that massage and meditation and painting and all this is a part of what I consider my everyday work day and what's required of me to build this, sustain the success, and going on retreats like dolphin swims. But it wasn't always that way. I think, as many probably can relate in their own way, we kind of have this sometimes a dark night of the soul moment. And for me, it happened in 2008. I was living a life that on the outside looked very successful. It's like by the age of 20, I was a single mom, single self-employed mom, had a hairstyling business, makeup business. I was earning six figures. On the outside, everything looked amazing, but I was wearing all these hats. I was, going to soccer games, networking, managing clients, building a business. And I was extremely overwhelmed and stressed out. I was just on this hamster wheel of to-dos and busyness. And I didn't really know any tools I didn't know anything about being highly sensitive or my intuition at this time. And so I was just pushing through, and it was like wine and chocolate was kind of my only go-to get through the day. I was like, I got to do it again. And eventually that caught up with me, right? That caught up with me. And I was about 2008 that I had a car accident. I had a couple glasses of wine at my friend's birthday celebration, found myself on my way home, ended up rolling my car, flipping it twice, ending up in a ditch. And, I definitely felt like the arms of the angels were around me, because every single window was completely broken out. Somehow nobody else was involved. I wasn't injured. I got a few little scratches here, from the accident. And I crawled out of that window, and I'm like, something has to change. I was really afraid and alone, because I didn't know how to do life differently, but I knew that I had to do life differently. And so I prayed. I was raised in a pretty conservative religious upbringing. I didn't know any of these other things about meditation things yet. So I just prayed. I wanted to be happy and at peace. And in response to that, my grandfather came to me in a dream. And it was like the first time I had this really visceral dream. I'm like, this happened. My grandfather was here. And he let me know, he woke something up in me. He let me know that I was going to be okay, that I wasn't alone, that he was there, that there's angels, God, universe, there's all this spiritual support, here to guide and protect you. And when I woke up, I just felt this like overwhelming sense of peace and hope in my heart that I don't think I'd ever felt before up to that point. And it was pretty quickly after that I would say, again, didn't have the word for synchronicity, but like the synchronicities started happening. I started like every self-help book that I could read. I loved Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now, and Wayne Dyer, Power of Intention. And, I just started reading all these books over the next 6 to 9 months. And it was just like opening up all of these awarenesses. And it was really at that point that I knew that I just had such a powerful awakening. I had also been experiencing a lot of really unhealthy codependent type relationships in my life at that time, up to that point, that caused a lot of stress, I think. And so it was at that moment that I really realized that I wanted to help others. I awakened to this truth that we can create our own lives, that we don't have to be stuck in situations that we don't want to be, that we truly have the power to change things. And, that empowerment wanted me just to support other people in knowing that truth for themselves as well. And so that's really what led me to my spiritual work that I do now.
That is so powerful. That is just like my heart when you said, what you experienced. I just was thinking to myself, what would I do in that situation? Wow. Oh my goodness. I can't even imagine what was going through your mind at the time. And then to have the synchronicities start to fall into place, and you were just like, something's guiding me. And I'm really finding that every woman that I speak to, I call them tower moments, because I do tarot. I consult my cards practically every day, but it's like a tower moment, and it redirects you to get onto your soul's path. And thank God you got on yours.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you mentioned that you realize you're highly sensitive. What can you explain to me what highly sensitive is in from your perspective, and how is it a superpower, not a weakness?
Yes. I mean, I think there's a lot of crossover. There's some differences, but a lot of crossover between highly sensitive, empathic, intuitive, and I would say I'm kind of all three. I think a lot of people will resonate with all of it. And so what I'll share kind of resonates with most of the above. And I think that, when you're highly sensitive and you don't know, and I think that what I've noticed in patterns is there's a lot of addiction, there's a lot of numbing out, there's a lot of codependency patterns that kind of stem when you are unaware of this. And part of that is because your emotional center, like your awareness of the unseen, your awareness of your own emotions, often if you're an empath, other people's emotions, can be turned up like 25% louder. I feel like the volume's turned up on life, right? And so if you're not aware of that, that's where I think oftentimes the numbing will come in initially for people, is because they feel like they're feeling too much and they don't know what to do. And I think it can create a lot of confusion about what is your emotions versus others, which I think is part of the path of healing and awakening that a lot of sensitives, highly sensitives and empathic people go through. So on the sense of where it can feel overwhelming, that's what's happening. I think when people start to feel confused, what's their emotions, what's others, wanting to avoid confrontation because they're automatically knowing somebody's going to be mad at them if they speak up. And so there's all these patterns that happen as coping mechanisms oftentimes, which is why it will feel like a burden for people, or they'll tend to be overwhelmed, or it will be leading into what brings them to their awakening a lot of times in different ways. Now, on the flip side, the gift is the powerful aspect is also, so like the joy is also turned up. The fact to be moved by the beauty of a sunset, or to have that empathic connection with animals, or to just see the beauty and the best and the highest potential in others, and be able to just truly witness the beauty and grace that life has to offer, is also very heightened for sensitive people. Typically they tend to be naturally intuitive, though they may not know it or trust it always at the time, right? It's added to that confusion piece initially, but they're very intuitive and creative, and they're naturally tapped in. And so when an empath and sensitive really starts to learn that the energetic overwhelm is what's causing a lot of the stress, right? Like when I was a hairstylist, that was what was really a lot of what was leading to my, where's the wine and chocolate after? I was just, I didn't know I was like carrying all of my clients' energy all day. I remember the first time I was consciously aware that I took their energy, I was shampooing my client's hair. And all of a sudden we go over and I finish shampooing her hair. And all of a sudden I noticed I had this piercing headache. And I never got headaches. So it was very odd to me. And I didn't have one just before. And so we go over and sit down. She's like, wow, you have magic fingers, because I've had a migraine for 3 days and you just shampooed my hair and it's gone. And I was like, I just sucked it up. And it's that transference of energy that empaths are living with most of their life, that they don't understand, that they become the effect of the energy and the emotions around them. And that can be extremely exhausting and overwhelming. But when you learn to have the awareness of your own energy sovereignty, your own energetic boundaries, and learn to recognize how to maintain that for yourself, you get to keep the gift and ditch all of the overwhelm, right? It becomes, instead of a burden, a gift, because when you clear out all of that extra chatter and noise of everybody else's thoughts and ideas, and what, you're hyper aware of what they're going to think of you, like all of this stuff starts to reflect in your field, and suddenly you're having doubts about yourself or self-conscious, and you don't realize maybe you picked up that judgment from somebody, right? And so all of these things, when you start to recognize, hey, I can have my energy sovereignty and I can have my energetic space and be aware of what's happening around me without taking it in and being the effect of it, magic starts to happen. You start to have a clear channel to what's already very tapped in to your intuition. So it's not even very difficult to develop the intuitive gifts. It's more about learning to ground and clear out the energy so that you have that clear channel. And then you're pretty tapped in. And of course, you can continue to develop it from there. So I think that's huge.
I'm literally sitting here going, okay, my whole life making sense now. I think the only part that's missing, well, that I have not yet, I don't think I have an addiction of any kind. I haven't tried to numb it. I've suppressed it my whole life because I was told that you can't talk about things like that. You're too emotional. And I thought that they were bad things. And so I just hid all of that. And that's just, been sitting inside me for a really long time until I started doing the work, and I was just like, no, like I think that this is something that's guiding me. And that's when I started to feel my intuition, when I started being like, okay, why am I feeling this way? Why is this coming up for me suddenly? Like, let me sit it with my intuition and try to hear it out, because there's obviously something going on and I need to pay more attention to it. But yeah, that's a relief. And to know that that can be, that overwhelm piece can be, I don't know why this word's coming up for me, but undone. Because I think that's the biggest part of being someone who is highly sensitive. You become so overwhelmed and you don't know what to do with that.
Yeah.
And so to be able to learn how to channel it and
And manage
maintain
your
your state is huge.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you hit on an important point too, which was another aspect of my story I hadn't shared. But it's about that, for me, I think that it's starting to change and shift for the next generations of children, which is very exciting as more awakened people are having children. But for a lot of us, and previous generations, I think, it wasn't widely known. It was like I was raised in a very conservative religious upbringing. And so there was a lot of suppression about like just a disconnect about it all until I was about 32 years old when I had that awakening, because I just, first of all, it was like there was no permission for it. And then once I did have my awakening, because after the books and reading and everything, I went to my first psychic reading. I'm like, I don't even know if people are psychic. I didn't know. It was like, my friend's like, just go. They told me more about me than I could say. And I was like, all right. So I went and she literally explained how I was feeling more clearly to me than I could have articulated myself. And she said, you're going to be doing what I'm doing within 5 years. And I was like, what? I just started hearing my grandparents talk, like I was at that point started hearing my grandparents and having special time with my angels and my guides and all of that. But I couldn't imagine. And it was my fear of judgment. Right. So then there was like, okay, so now I'm awakened. I want to help others awaken their gifts. I'm clear that's my purpose. But I still, for about 5 years, really struggled with my business not growing or not really making the impact I was born for. And it was very much about that piece of feeling afraid of people's judgment. I was like, how am I going to have my family and my hairdresser friends and my networking professionals I've built this reputation around to know about this newly awakened psychic healer, past life mediumship reader self? I was like, no, I compartmentalized it completely, and then the highly sensitive aspect, I was so petrified of public speaking. Like I was so shy. And I think that fear of judgment ties in with being sensitive because we don't realize we've read the room when we walked in. So we already know if people are kind of judging. And then the fear about maybe like I was close with my family. So it mattered to me if I felt like they might, their fear about my path affected me for a long time until I finally just learned how to, my path was to integrate all of that and just be who I truly am. And then with that, I feel like the elephant in the room with my family even dissolved. They don't get my path, but I don't feel like I have to dim because of my fear of their judgment either. And that's really when everything opened up as well. And I think that that's a huge piece that you mentioned is the suppression has a lot to do with that sensitivity because we are hyper aware about other people's thoughts and feelings about us. And we can internalize that very sensitively. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel that deeply. And it's, there would have had to have been some really big internal shifts that occurred within you to go from who you were, struggling single mom, you had your hairdressing business and you're surrounded by people who know you as a certain way. And then you're like, I'm a 6-figure spiritual entrepreneur, mentor, speaking here and, running retreats and that, what was the shift you think that had to happen within you to make that possible?
I think it was a lot. I remember when it happened because I had been, doing my thing. I'd been doing my meetup groups and trying to do, had a wellness center once a week while I was doing my hair. Like I had full control over both schedules. And so I was trying to make this shift, but my spiritual business was not making the money for me to let this go. Right. And all of that was my internal fears and visibility stuff really. But it got to a point where, I realized that this fear of other people's judgment was actually the thing that was holding me back. And so I remember this kind of pivotal moment where I put my stake in the ground. I was like, okay, angels, okay, I'm ready for this and I just want to be guided. And the next thing you know, God has a funny sense of humor because the next thing you know, I end up at a client attraction conference, right? And I was in this room with about 300 other sensitive, highly empathic people listening to this business, mentor talk about speaking to grow your business. And I'm like, I'm so scared of public speaking. I'm like, you've got to be kidding. I'm like arguing with my angels. So you can tell me if you've ever argued with your angels, but I know that I'm fighting for my fear when I do that, right? Like I knew that. And so in that moment, it became clear that when the pain and emptiness I felt about not living my purpose became bigger than my fear of people's judgment or my fear of speaking my truth and actually being seen for who I truly am, when that turning point happened, I was able to feel the fear and do it anyways. I was able to invest in this speaking program that was about $22,000, which was a lot of money for me at the time, to learn my biggest fear, which was the bigger problem. Cause I'm like, well, what if I pay for this and then I don't do it? And I'm like, but worse, what if I pay for it and then I have to do it? I'm like, how am I going to do this? And so, but it was that moment when I really got clear that, I know that when my actions are in alignment with my heart and my intuition, success happens, and I don't allow fear to stop me. And so it really became that turning point of the emptiness and dissonance I really felt from being out of alignment with my higher soul's truth became so apparent that I had to just feel the fear and do it anyways. And then once I made that shift, I think, it's not just one shift, you have to keep choosing it. But that was a huge turning point, because previous to that, I was playing very small in a very compartmentalized world that was never going to actually be seen and grow if I didn't have that decision to just know that I didn't have to be perfect, not worry about other people's judgment, and just do what my heart was calling me to. And so, yeah, that's kind of when that happened.
It's like you're speaking to my soul right now. I'm like, this is something I need to hear right now. 100%. I haven't experienced fighting with my angels, but it's more like a sarcastic, really,
Yeah.
really. What are you trying to do here? Yeah, it's. I was going to say I look forward to getting to a place where I'm like, trying to resist, because for me, I look at those opportunities as such incredible moments that shift occurs. When you come up against yourself, because that's really all we're doing in our life. It's never really other people. We're coming up against our own crap. So when I come up against myself, I was like, ooh, learning opportunity.
Yes.
And sometimes I'm like, oh, learning opportunity, but I'll take it.
Exactly. That's what I had to do. I did my TLC body meditation method, which is kind of at that. I was in this conference, and you've got, again, 300 other empaths all pinging in a bunch of fear about this decision to invest probably for their first time in a big way about this, And so I had to go outside and really feel into it. I had to, at this point, I knew enough of what you're saying, which is I get to create the life that I'm living. And I knew all of that, but fear was still driving the show a lot. And so I went out there and I just tuned in, and it's the TLC is talk to your body, listen to your body, and then commit to your body's needs. And when I tuned into that, I really felt the difference. I'm like, what is in the highest alignment for my path right now? Like I needed to get out of my head and the fear and the doubt about the money. Cause I didn't even have my mortgage payment in the bank at that time, And so I was like, I could have used that excuse, right? But I knew better. I know that I'm always provided for. And so I just leaned into it, and I felt, oh my goodness, okay, I have a choice, as we always have free will of choice, but the opportunity of transformation is to not allow my fear to stop me and to listen to my soul's voice, because I could very clearly feel that this was going to be the best next step that's in alignment with my path. And I could choose not to, and I would have other opportunities, but it would prolong my peace and happiness and purpose. And so therefore I was at a crossroad that I had to just lean into and quiet that voice and take a step, take a leap of faith. Many times I have.
I was going to say, how many cliffs do you think you've jumped off?
We get comfortable, things shift again. Here we grow again, I'll say a lot of times, because it's just like, okay, here we go. But yes, I love your perspective as well, because they're all opportunities of transformation. Oh, and now I'm to the point where I've stubbed my toe and said, oh, thank you. Okay. I wasn't being very present. What is this now? Because I know that there's something there like that is calling me back into my body and to be present.
Yeah. I think the biggest one for me is when someone cuts me off in traffic. I'm like, it's okay. I'm clearly meant to just get there when I'm meant to get there.
Yes. Okay.
Put the rage away. Yeah, no, that's for sure. So you talk about helping people harness their intuition. What does that actually look like in everyday life and in terms of the decisions you're making within your business?
Yeah, I love that question because I don't even know how to separate it anymore, to be honest, right? But I think it's a steady progress of that. But I think for me, how it looks is that I my mornings start with a part of what I consider my work day is I know my rhythm, and other people's rhythm might be different timing, but for me, I know that the beginning part of my day, I have to give myself a couple of hours to sit in my hot tub, slowly wake up with my coffee or tea, and meditate and do some journaling on my goals. Like I have to have that space for me to really connect with myself first before I jump in headfirst to the to-dos, to the emails, to the demands of my team or my clients or the workspace, right? Like that helps me get connected. And when I take the time to do that, that's really what I'm doing. Is I'm tuning into my higher self, my angels and guides. Sometimes I might pull an oracle card too, but I'm using my tools to click to get connected first so that my higher self and my intuition can drive my actions that day instead of the demands or my fear or the pressure of the to-dos driving my day. And things will still get done. In fact, they'll get done a lot faster and more efficiently when I do that, because when you connect with your intuition, right? Your intuition to me is simply a clear communication or an aware communication between your human self and your higher self or your angels, guides, God, source, right? It's that same line of communication. And so your intuition is that translation between the two. It's your conscious awareness of what your higher self or your angels, your guides, or the universe is guiding you towards. And I know that when I tune into that place and allow that to be the voice that I listen to in the very beginning of my day, then the rest of the day, I'm much more tapped into that, even when I don't realize it, right? Sometimes I'll be driving and I'll think, oh, I'll just go this way. And all of a sudden I'll realize I'm tripping over my intuition guided me here. Oh, that's why I went here and instead of there, because now I've met this person I haven't seen in so long. Like, how was that? So it's like you start to live your life in a lot more alignment with synchronicity and flow. And so everything just happens much more easily. And it's in those moments in the morning that I'll get, sometimes it's just clearing my space of my own mental chatter and getting cleared and centered for the day. And other times I might get an entire download of a program or an idea or whatever it is. And that starts to lead me into my creative work that I'm creating for the day. Right. And so I think for me, how it looks on a practical sense is prioritizing that time that I need each day. And for me, it works best in the morning before I get into the mental to dos, and then just allow that to be my guiding light. And I always set my intention to be in alignment with my higher path and purpose that day and invite the signs and the guidances to come through to help me stay on track when I go unconscious, because that's the thing that's great about guides is, they're not going to take away your free will of choice. We're creating our own reality in life, and that's the beauty of it. But when we have guides, what's powerful is when you do get a little unconscious in your mind or spinning in a fear or worry, if you're attuned yourself in the beginning of the day or consistently to your spirit team, they'll just snap you out of the stupor. They'll catch your attention when you're super in an unconscious moment and guide you back into that alignment through the signs and synchronicities throughout your day. And what that does is it keeps you connected with your intuition, not just for the hour you're meditating or listening to a guided thing, but throughout your day. Right. And so for me, it's just been a practice of staying as connected and present as I can, because the present moment is your point of power. It's when you can be present to recognize the information that's coming to you. And it's how I guide my actions for that day. It's how I make my choices.
I'm hearing a lot that slow mornings are really important for people like us, like people who are tuned in and have that spiritual aspect. But especially even for the cycles, women's cycles. This is one of the things that I'm learning. I've heard a lot of women say this now, but I wonder because it sounds like you do a lot before you start your day. So, what time does your day start?
Well, I usually don't like my preferred time to start seeing clients and stuff is like 11 a.m. my time. Right. So
Nice.
I will
Okay.
start sometimes, but then I also like to try to get the workout in, and sometimes if I don't do it in the beginning, then it won't happen because I get tired. Like I'm not a good evening workout person. And so it's like, it'll be different. Sometimes I naturally wake up at 5:30 or 6, but I love the fact that I don't have to have an alarm clock. That's a huge like thing for me. As long as I like my 7, 8 hour sleeps, my body does like its normal amount of sleep. But I'll typically, wake up between 5:30 and 6, maybe 6:30 on a day if I needed it, And then I just kind of allow that morning to unfold. And I typically just don't put anything that I have to do consistently before 11, unless it's like a podcast or a special circumstance. Then of course I will. But I like to have that time to not be pressured, so I can work out, I can meditate, I can get my, sometimes if I'm going to do something like create a video or channeling, like I do weekly channeled messages and things like that, it's like I want to do that before I get into my emails, right? So I start with that kind of work and then go into the more interactive with the world type of work. So it's not that I'm not necessarily working before 11. It's just I'm not introducing other people usually until about
Oh,
then.
I love that. Oh, that sounds very nice.
Yeah,
That
good.
sounds very nice. Oh, yes. How am I going to have a life that's like this? It's like, how can I
Just
plan
little
now?
changes, and yes, the people, you start to schedule around it. That's what I do. I book it in, like if I put my creative time in there, and I just put it like it's in my calendar block, and it becomes part of my day. But here's what I'll tell you too, is when I started doing that, what I could get done, you say, okay, that's still 8 hours of your day. It's part of my work day. So that leaves me 6 hours. I'll get more done in that 6 hours if I took the 2 hours to myself to take a walk or go to the gym or meditate and do all my things, because I'll be more efficiently connected to my higher self and my guidance and synchronicity. So things will just happen more easily and flow without the effort. And so versus when I don't do that, it might take me 8 or 10 hours. Do you know what I mean? And so I have learned that it actually saves me time to just prioritize the time and consider it a part of my workday, not something that if I have time.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
That's so true. And I'm thinking the days that I don't do yoga in the morning, those days for me are just really sluggish when I miss that morning me time. Yeah.
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah. How do you discern the voice of intuition then with, say, fear or ego? Because I think that a lot of people don't trust themselves. And I'm one of those people, right? At some point, I didn't trust my intuition because I thought I'm operating out of a place of fear. So, how do you discern the difference?
I think it's, discernment is something that I think you build over time. I don't necessarily think it's a flip of a switch. And there are times that I have more mental chatter running that I have to determine as well, too. So we kind of go in phases, I think. One aspect is looking at, what is my reasoning? So I'll tend to kind of tune into like, am I making this decision from love or fear? Right? Because sometimes making a decision that's misaligned can feel like a contraction, but is it because my mind says, oh, but what about this or what about that? Like that's typically an indicator to me when my mind is dictating a fear that is driving the decision versus, I don't know, that doesn't necessarily feel right to me. I think one of the best things I gave permission to myself, and as a sensitive person can be a great tip, is to not have to answer somebody right away if they ask for an engagement, like a time, right? Because like sometimes, like as an example, to start to feel into the discernment, like somebody might ask you for, oh, do you want to do lunch? And I'm like, I don't know why, but that's not feeling like a yes. So instead of just like, I would used to probably just say, okay. And then I go, oh, no, I'm so tired. Or, oh, this came up and that's why. Like I started to learn, oh, that's my intuition going, I don't know if you want to book that. Right? Not my mind. It was more of a feeling for me in that way. And I think people's intuition will work differently, but that kind of contraction feeling, I'll identify, is it coming from the mind or is it more of my body? That's a huge one for me. And then, and just kind of saying, if I could get all those fear-based excuses out, what would my decision be? Like without the excuse of time or money or whatever, if I, as an example, to make an investment decision, like in the program or whatever, I had to get clear into my body and really feel into the alignment. And so sometimes that TLC method I do where I just breathe in and I just ask, and I actually embody myself in a bubble of what would it feel like? And you can do it standing or sitting in a meditation or standing, but like stepping into like, what would it feel like to say yes? And come back into neutral. What would it feel like to say no with the intention of, is this decision in alignment with my higher path? Okay, let me go to neutral. What if I said no? Ooh, okay, now I'm getting a more clear feeling of beyond the mind what it is. And so I've done little tricks over the years to really start to tune into what are my feelings of yes and no. What is my discernment for? And for some, it's in their gut. some it's in their heart, others it's in, it's in different places for people. But I find it's important to know that if it's your mind fears dictating you, then that is not going to be the most clear neutral response. It still might be a no, but not because of those reasonings. So you need to go a little deeper. I also think for me, what helped me get to having more trust was healing a lot of, like, a couple of healing things. Like for me, I went into relationships with people who betrayed my trust, right? Or in a lot of ways. And so I had to do a lot of self-forgiveness around decisions I made wrong, or being in relationships where people said, "Oh, you're crazy," or, whatever it was, when I knew they were lying, but they were never going to admit it. So then I got to doubt myself. And so I had to heal a lot of my relationships from the past where they made me feel that way when it wasn't true. And then myself for making decisions to trust people or making the wrong decision. And so once I cleaned up that, I felt like also my barometer to recognize truth, spiritual truth versus the ego's lie, became more clear. Right. And then I just always retort to my body when my mind isn't clear. And I, kind of get to the root of what am I really afraid of? And if that wasn't a problem, what would my choice be? And that'll usually get me more on track as well.
I was like, if I ask myself that, decisions would be so easy. It's the stuff that I make excuses for in my head that keep me here a lot of the times. And, in whatever situation that is, I'm pretty good at making decisions, but there are just some things. There are just some things that I'm like, and I have like, a brain tango, and can't make a decision. And but I know what's in my heart. And so when you say it like that, and for the listeners who are listening, to be able to make a decision from your heart space is what it sounds like. You're coming from love. Is this the most loving thing I can do for myself? Not the excuses, but if I do this, this will happen. If you make a decision from that space, it's the decision that resonates most with what your next step is, what your soul's path is, what what you're meant to be doing in this world.
Yes, I love that. Very clear. But did you call it brain tango or mind tango?
Brain tango.
That's great. I love it. Because it
Yeah.
is a ping pong match in there sometimes, but you kind of got to get out from that before you can feel into the truth.
Yeah. And because I think of it as, I don't know if you recall, Scent of a Woman. Did you ever watch that movie? It's an old Al Pacino movie, but it's basically a blind guy. I think he's like a war vet, very angry, but he knows how to tango like nobody else. And so there's the scenes where, it's super intense, the moves, and then there are scenes where it's just sexy, and then there's scenes that, and I'm just like, in my brain often tries to make things sound sexy for me. And then there's like fully intense moments where it's trying to steer me in a different way. So that's why I call it my brain tango.
Layer of that.
Um, really good movie for anyone who's listening. Very old, but a really good movie.
I love that so
Yeah.
much. Yeah, another tip I could give too about developing discernment, maybe that was coming to mind, is like, I made a habit for a long time of, like I said, in my morning, I'm always going to say, I'm just going to, at least, even if I only have 5 minutes, even if it's in your shower, right? 5 minutes of meditation is better than no minutes, however you can take it. But when you make more time for it, of course, the effects compound for you, right? But I would always set the intention to, give me, loud, clear signs I can easily understand, and the confidence and courage to take action on them throughout my day to be in alignment. And then as an example, so I would ask for all the little things. And I think this is something that I get asked a lot, like, oh, I don't want to bother my angels for something so small. And it's like, no, there's nothing too big or small. They're unlimited. So I would use it as a training ground on things that didn't matter that much, so that when I had to make a big decision that was triggering fear, I had a more deeper trust in it. So I would ask, what's the quickest way to get somewhere? Or as an example that came to mind to share was, I was like, okay, angels, I need to get to this appointment and I was running late. What's the fast? Just help me to get to my appointment. I had just enough time to get there. And all of a sudden I was driving and I had this thought or idea to go this different way. And in my mind, I kind of poo-pooed the thought. I was like, why would I do that? And then so I'm like, so I kind of like said, why would I go that backwards way? So I went the regular way and get up there, and all the street lights were out, right? So it was like flashing lights. And so then of course I was late, and it's not no harm, no foul, but in that moment, what it taught me, because I'm in the habit of asking all the time, what's the quickest grocery line? What's the quickest parking spot? Asking these things and just trusting myself to be guided. right? So in this moment, I realized, oh my gosh, it was a great teaching moment, because if I get an idea that I wouldn't normally have thought, maybe I wouldn't want to be so quick to throw it off, right? Because it wasn't something, it really didn't come from me, or it came from my higher self or angels, right? Of course, I just asked, promptly forgot. And so I realized, oh, if I would have gone that way that didn't make sense, I probably would have been on time. So we go unconscious throughout our day. We have over 80,000 thoughts a day. They're not all conscious, no matter how much you meditate. But the more that we practice it, the more clear it is. And the more that we work with our guides in this way all the time throughout our day, and start recognizing the synchronicities and the visual signs they're giving us as we're driving down the road. I've had another time where Archangel Michael was insistent on this coffee, and I'd been feeling called as a sensitive to release caffeine, and I was adamant to get this coffee, and I got in a traffic jam and all these things. And finally I was in my head, and all of a sudden Archangel Michael illuminated this sign, which is how I get a lot. It's like, get your alignment now. And it just echoed at me, and I was like, oh, I'm in my head. I'm in spinning mode right now. Like, get grounded. And I realized, he caught me from being out of my head. Now, it was a big O tire sign, but no, that was Michael saying, get in your body and get out of your head, get your alignment, and so in that moment, he snaps me back out. And so I practice these little things throughout the day, and they're little. So if you mess up, who cares, right? You're just, next time I'm going to pay attention to that idea that I wouldn't have normally thought, before dismissing it. And I might entertain it to see if it makes sense to me. And so I've trained myself into being more natural with following those things. Does that make sense? And I think it's those little things, because when you make it, most of the time people are relying on it for a big decision that is triggering a lot of fear. And at that point, it might be more difficult to discern through your mind. And so if you practice the day-to-day, when you have a big decision, you'll be more tapped into being able to trust it.
That makes absolute sense. And it's such good advice. That's such good advice. The practice on the little things, instinctively, I've been trying to do that myself. And I've caught myself that whenever I'm about to do something that I probably shouldn't be doing, like if it's, let's say I'm about to buy something and I was like, oh, it's a bit expensive. And I'm like, oh, fuck it, I'm going to do it. When I have that, oh, fuck it, I'm going to do it. I know I'm like, nope, I'm not meant to do that, because I have like this resistance and I'm like, nah, I deserve it. And so I'll do it anyway. And I've had so many times, like if I'm, taking a different exit on the freeway, if I'm wanting to buy something that's more expensive, or like a course that I want to do, and I'm like, no, I'm going to wait because I feel like there's something, I'm going to need this for something else that's going to be more important for me. And so things like that. So I've learned that that's the thing that I say to myself when I'm about to not listen to my intuition. So that's one of the things that I've picked up in the last few months. But that guidance is, I'm going to start literally asking for every decision in my life now to start practicing.
Yeah, because then it becomes second nature, and then you will realize in hindsight you're tripping over your intuition anyways, naturally, because your higher self starts to take the front seat of the creative aspect of your life versus the mind and the fear and the ego. But it does take time, for sure. And there's some times where I fight it too. Like I remember one time I used to always like my appointments booked really efficiently so I could get it. I'd rather have my appointment 6 hours doing hair than a gap for 2 hours and off 8 hours, And I booked this appointment and I felt this ping. And in the past, I may have, previously I probably would have dismissed it. I thought, oh, I made a mistake. I need to book her at 12, not 2. Now I got to sit around for 2 hours. I should text her back. And then I felt this. Nope. And when I got to work that day, I actually had a walk-in client. I made $200 extra because I happened to be available and I was in the right spot at the right time. You know what I mean? So I've learned to just, when I feel it, do it. And, sometimes I feel like I try to listen to what's happening, because sometimes I'll notice in hindsight where I got the ping. My daughter and I call, oh, the angels gave me a ping and I didn't listen. Or I'm so glad I listened to that, little ping, because now I can see why that matters. And it doesn't always make sense in the moment. But in hindsight, you'll practice that into alignment. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk energy. Okay. So how do you protect your energy as someone who is highly sensitive to stay grounded, because we've got a really noisy world that we live in right now. So how do you protect your energy?
Yeah, for sure. I actually teach a system called energetic mastery. So I have a set of tools that I teach and use that I've used for many, many years. And it consists of, a grounding your energy consistently, because you need to have a space to have the energy release from, right? Because we're going to energy swap a little bit, and we're going to have our own energy emotions triggered throughout the day, right? Somebody cut you off, you're going to release the frustration. So grounding is a huge piece of it. I work with the energy of the earth and with the energy of source, and I just use that as sort of an energetic flush to my field. There's also a tool that I call crystalline silhouette, which actually it works protection tool from the sense of elevating your energy so that lower energy doesn't dissipate into your field versus like if you're protecting in a bubble, like when I first started doing energy work, and you can still do this for people that are new and you don't have tools, but I'd ask my angels, like just surround myself in a bubble of light. But sometimes what I notice is when people are using their protection tool like that, like, oh, protect me, they almost created a blockage from good coming in and out as well, which creates more things to protect from, kind of. And so my version of a protection tool is to elevate the energy in a way that the lower energy doesn't get to come in, but the higher vibration of love and higher frequency can move through more freely, so people can really see and feel my energy. They're not feeling cut off. And then, there's a few other tools about that I work with. And so I have like an energetic system, which is really a style of meditation tools that is specifically designed to clear and protect your energy. And that's what I really use. But those are some just little tips that, you can apply different types of tools to this similar thing.
Yeah, I suppose not everything works for everyone either, right?
Yeah, and do it consistently. I mean, doing I feel some kind of meditation is pretty much essential when it comes to developing your intuition, and for highly sensitives to just regulate their nervous system and get present and all of that. So some form of meditation, but then exercise is another way for people. You could do mindful exercise, but you can also do in your head exercise, right? So it's really about how you're doing something, if it's going to be effective for you. Yeah.
What are some of the most common things that you come across with the people that you work with, uh, in terms of, where you can see that they're not living in alignment? And what are some of the things that you can guide people to be able to get back on track?
Just what did you say? Like the common like indicators of when people are living out of alignment?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think when people come to me, they've kind of just gone through often a big dark night of the soul. So I think like when you're hitting up, so a couple of ways that you can recognize: are you bumping up against the same kind of pattern over and over and over again, right? Like what woke me up, and I think can be an example, is like I was dating the same person 3 times. Like they seemed totally different. I swore they were totally different. I went for something totally different. And then it ended up being exactly the same. And then by the third one, I had to look at the fact, what is the common denominator? Not that I deserve poor treatment, but I was tolerating it, right? I was tolerating. There's a part of my inner work that needed to know that I deserved more and that I could trust myself. That was part of my growth in that. But it was like, until I think the first key really is awareness. So awareness that you're repeating a pattern, right? Or you have a resistance with something, or you're really unhappy at your work and you're complaining about it a lot, right? Like when there's something that's just repeating that is not feeling good, or a pattern, then that's the awareness piece. That's key. Second thing is taking personal responsibility. Like you have to decide, okay, I'm not saying that this treatment, like in that relationship example, is like I do not deserve to be treated and talked to this way, but what is my part within this? What's the opportunity of transformation? Why do I keep attracting this situation? Right. And from there, I can start to then identify, well, what is the pattern or block? Like what's at the root cause? What's driving this pattern to continue? And that's really where the inner work comes in. And there's many styles of inner work. You can do it through meditation and journaling on your own, or sometimes you might have a mentor, or there's just a lot of different tools for shadow work. But that's where you want to kind of get to the root of like what's really going on, like what is driving this pattern. And then it's about taking new action, and which will often be about moving through a fear, right? You have to take a new action and make a different decision in order to fully change a pattern. And so I think those 4 steps is really the process, like if I'm going to simplify it, that you have to do to really change something and make it stick. Awareness, personal power is your personal responsibility, is your point of power. Get to the root cause, and then make a new choice, right? And I think that's kind of it. But I think it's just whenever you don't feel, and I think the other barometer to look at is, I believe, when you're aligned with yourself, when you're aligned with your higher self and your higher path and purpose, you're gonna feel and experience joy and health and abundance, and you're gonna have like that synchronicity, that flow, like things are gonna feel good most of the time. It's not to say we won't have growth times, we will. That's what we're doing as humans. We're growing and evolving. But when you're aligned with yourself, a natural byproduct is feeling good, right? Those things are going to feel good. And you're going to feel, and so if you're feeling like you're repeating something that's not, then that's an indicator to take a deeper look, whether it's within yourself or a job change, or perhaps sometimes relationships end, or a conversation. Maybe it's not as dramatic as ending. Maybe it's that you've withholded a conversation, and part of your lesson is about speaking your truth and having a boundary or expressing your true vulnerable feelings. And so that's where it comes into where you have to feel the fear and do something that maybe you would normally feel uncomfortable in order to get back into alignment. But that's the work, and that's the growth, and that's the part that gets you there, right?
Yeah, I love that. And I love that you mentioned the speaking your truth part, because I find that whenever I'm afraid of what I'm about to say, my instantly the muscles in my neck and my throat start to ache, like instantly. So I know straight away, I'm like, okay, I'm afraid to talk about this, whatever this is. And that's been something that I recognized recently. And that piece of, our body knows before our brain does.
Yeah. And it said, and if your brain is overactive, then try to get to your body before you go back to the brain, right? Because I think it's like that mental spin.
Yeah. And it's so easy. It's so easy to listen to our brain. And granted, it serves many purposes, but it also just doesn't like change. It wants to stay safe. It's like, I don't feel like doing anything today. You should relax. You deserve it. Yep. Yeah, I've been there many times.
Yes, and that's a tricky one because I think sometimes people can use that scapegoat. Oh, because when it comes to alignment, I think that's a good general thing. When you're in alignment in your life in general, things are going to be flowing and working well in different areas of your life. That's a natural byproduct of being in alignment. However, I think sometimes people can use that as a scapegoat if you're not careful to like, oh, exactly. I don't feel like doing that video today. I'll do it. It doesn't feel good. It's like, well, I'll tell you that your purpose work for me, my spiritual business and aligning with my purpose work has stretched me beyond my comfort zone over and over and over again. And sometimes you have to just like feel the fear and step through it anyways. There's a difference there. It feels the same initially, but you want to kind of get underneath it and say, what's really driving this? Is it my fear of what my mom will think of my angel reading video? Or is it that I really don't want to do it? Is my guidance really telling me not to do it? And really kind of decide what's driving this actually, right?
Yeah, that's massive. Now I'm coming up with all kinds of moments where I'm like, yeah, I was just like, if I make this video, what's everyone going to think? Uh,
That,
no matter how much work you do on yourself,
that's a big
the
one.
stuff is still there. This is lifelong, my loves. This is lifelong.
But it does get easier. What I found, like in the beginning of my journey, I think when I still had so much, like I was aware. It's like I feel like when you first have your awakening, especially maybe as a sensitive person, you kind of just go, oh, like all the fear and the programming and the patterns are still very in your field because you haven't done the work to clear it up yet. But now you're just kind of unveiled to be more aware of what was already there that you weren't aware of before. And so it's almost like it kind of feels a little bit more intense initially, but I feel like the more that you do the work, the more tools that you gain, the more awareness you have, the more times you go through this process, the easier it gets. Because I think in the past, I could say certain things may have derailed me for months or even years, right? Are now maybe an hour or a day, or maybe even less than that. Maybe I get to avoid the pitfall altogether. Just be aware and move right through it, right? So I think it gets easier to navigate much more smoothly with less downtime. There's more like it's like rolling hills instead of highs and lows, and all this intense drama that it can feel like initially when you don't feel equipped with how to process these things or how to navigate your process your fears or your energy field or whatever it might be.
Why does this work mean so much to you?
Hmm?
Why does this work mean so much to you?
Oh, why does it? I think I just know I had points in my life. I want everyone to know that they are powerful, creative, divine beings who can create whatever they desire and they don't deserve or they don't have to stay stuck in things that don't serve them. Right? I spent a lot of years in really unhealthy, abusive, miserable relationships and I didn't know I didn't know I had a choice, right? I think I was stuck in that not feeling I had a choice. And so when I had that awakening, I was just like, wow, there's so many people under this dark cloud who don't know that they have a choice. But I want everyone to know you're powerful. You're creative. You get to create the life that you want. There is, you deserve love. You are worthy. You are capable. And I just think that is what makes me so happy, right? To
Yeah.
empower people to know they have choice.
Yeah. And that's a big one. That's a real, oh, see, I'm getting all throaty because of that. I'm like, yeah, that's a really big one. And like you, I lived my life that way for a really long time. I thought that I had to do things because others expected them of me. And that's the only way that I would fit in and be, of value to the people that I love. And then once I started living my life for me, I came up with a lot of resistance from a lot of people. So to be able to, live my truth in that way, it was a really big shift for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you think of spiritual leadership, the current climate at the moment has a lot of gurus in the space. How do you navigate that with your business?
I'm just in my lane. For me with my business at this point, I don't, I don't really even know what other people are doing right now. I feel like I'm just so busy and focused and staying in my lane and where I'm going and what I'm doing and what's important that I don't, yeah, it's almost like I don't feel like I'm bogged down by making those choices. I think I'm just focused on what is in alignment for me, where am I going, what am I here for, and I'm serving a purpose. And so that's where I focus. I think that for all of us, it's becoming more and more imperative and important for everybody, whether you're in a leadership position or if you are choosing who you're going to mentor with for that period of time. I think that the world is demanding, rightfully, which is great, that you embody your talk, your walk, your talk. Like no longer is it going to work for people to just blindly say, this is what you should do. And people are noticing and recognizing, are you walking your talk? Are you embodying what you're speaking about? Are you living in integrity and in alignment with your values? And so I just do my best to live in integrity and in alignment with my values and with what I'm sharing. I walk my talk as best as I can. And I think the people that I feel called to be in the world around are other people who are also in that integrity with themselves. And I feel like for me, that's just something that you can feel and sense. And so I think that's an important discernment for people also when they're making decisions about who they're listening to, is that understand, listen to it from your own barometer of truth. I mean, the biggest part of my work that I do with people is helping them to learn to discern and trust their own truth, not what somebody's saying, but what take 80% and ditch the rest, right? If it works for you, take what works and leave the rest, but don't allow yourself to just blindly take in what somebody's saying. Like be noticing, like, how do you feel about this? How does this resonate for you? And really trust yourself in that. And I think that then you'll be guiding towards people, because there's always people that we can learn from. We're never going to stop learning. There's people who are further down the road in every stage of our spiritual growth, and for me as well. But it's like you have to kind of you have to stay centered in what is my truth within this? How does that resonate and land for me? Take what works and leave the rest. And I think that is becoming, like, I don't think people's wool is going to be able to be pulled over their eyes as easy as it used to be. Right. And so the people that are rising in this space, I think, are going to be the ones that are walking their talk. Right.
Yeah, and thank God for that. Because I think we've had far too long of a time in a space
We have to
where,
be perfect though, because
pardon?
that doesn't mean we have to be perfect though, right?
No.
Perfectionism's, I think, another thing that a lot of sensitive people we have, this hardcore perfectionism thing to work through. I think that was one of my things that I thought I had to be perfect for a long time, or I was afraid of not being perfect. So
Oh, yeah. Oh,
it's
my
always
God. I just thought that was a not good enough thing, not so much a sensitive person thing, but maybe it's both.
Well, I just was making the distinction that, you don't have to be perfect or know it all to be of service in the world. I'm a fourth grader and the people I support might be in second grade. A fourth grader has something to teach a second grader. And then a sixth grader has something, it's like we're all learning and growing and evolving. And there's things that we can gain and learn from people. But I think we just don't want to abandon our own barometer of truth within that. And that there's lots of different ways and methods and beliefs. And some things are going to work for some people and others for others. And so I think the more that we lean into that, the more easy it's just to discern who has support that's actually going to support you, right?
Mm.
Not everybody's information is going to be for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. You're a proud mum.
Yeah.
How has this work, doing this work, getting all the trainings that you've had, how has that helped you as a mother in your life?
Well, it's powerful. I think that's one of the things I love the most is my relationship with my daughter now. But, she was about 13 when I first had my awakening. So I had full well put her down the road of repeating patterns that I was raised in by the time I had my awakening. And I realized, oh no, I just like, wow, okay. So that was actually one of my initial drives to heal myself was like, I didn't want her to have to go through the same line of stuff, although I know that we all have our own soul's journey. That being said, she was already well on her way with my not knowing that when she was younger. And so there was a period of time of like learning, as I healed myself, it's been fun to watch her match and heal herself, and I think that she and I, how it helps us now is I think, it helps us have good communication. I'm very able to connect with her. I think of my family, she and I are the only two. She's very much awake, fiery, indigo child. Like she was a child who was awake and could see energy and spirits as a little girl. And at 3 years old, she knew that the adults just wouldn't get it. So she didn't say anything about it until I had my awakening. Right. So she lived her life pretty awake and open, and nobody really knew until I had my awakening and we began talking. I'm like, well, why didn't you say anything? It's like, oh, I knew you guys wouldn't get it. It's like she had that wisdom,
Wow.
but because we cycled so far into the patterns of the unhealthy patterns that she witnessed in my relationships, right? We had to go through the teenage years of figuring that out, but how it has really helped and served us now, I believe, is just watching her heal. Kids are resilient. Like she's matched a lot of the healing that I have done. We can have these conversations. We're best friends. Like she would say the same, we are kindred souls who have a deep love and an appreciation and respect for one another, who understand each other and can truly not have an expectation or demand on that love, right? And I think that that's something that, our parents may not realize they have conditions, but there are some unspoken conditions in most relationships when it comes to how people love, right? Or how people express, guilt or shaming you or, things like that, if it's not the same way as them. And so I think the beautiful thing I love is that we have this openness that we're different in a lot of ways. We're similar in a lot of ways. I'm happy that she can send me little pings. Oh, mom, I just love our angels. They pinged me and I got this. And so she'll text me a little thing where they guided her or something, And so we have this like connection that we can talk about all this stuff. And we're the only two people in my family that can, right? Everybody else doesn't have the same spiritual understanding or belief system. And so, yeah, it's really special that we have the bond that we have. And I think it has so much to do with seeing each other for who they are, accepting each other. Both of us accept each other for who we are. She's my biggest cheerleader. I'm her biggest cheerleader. And we don't have this need to change each other in order for that. And I think that in and of itself is very healing, to have somebody really be able to see you from that higher perspective, and that sounding board back and forth has just been a real blessing, I think, for both of us.
13 is such an impressionable age too. Like that's such an important time in a young girl's life, that for you to have your awakening during that period of time in her life, that's massive. And she also got to get on that journey sooner,
Oh
right?
yeah.
You were in your 30s when you got, I mean, I was also 31. 31 is when things started to change for me. The voices started at 27, but I
Yes.
didn't listen until I was about just shy of 31. But how lucky is she that she got to be in an environment where that's, accepted, it's valued, it's encouraged. Yeah, that's so
Yeah.
beautiful. So when you think of your legacy then, Jen, like what is it that you want to leave behind?
That's a beautiful question. I think just just to know that I've made a difference in people's lives. Like, I think that's one of the things I love. I never stops warming my heart when somebody says, "Oh my gosh, thank you so much for saying that. That really helped me see things differently. That really started me on a path of things." And so I think just, my legacy, I just want to know that I made a difference in people's life and I helped them love themselves more, feel more empowered, and make changes that then help their children, who then help their children. It's like, I think when we stand and we are leading and we're supporting each other in a powerful way to help people feel empowered in their life and their decisions, I know that that has a ripple effect that goes far and wide. And I think that that is really what I want to leave behind, is just that legacy of empowering others to just know who they truly are, to live in alignment with their truth and purpose, and to love themselves, and I think that that is the gift of the work that I get to offer. And nothing feels better, right? And being in alignment with how you're meant to serve, I think.
Absolutely. And I think the work that you'd be doing would teach people what they love about themselves too, really rediscovering who they are as people. And I mean, especially for me in this podcast, it started as a place for women to gain peace, purpose, and permission to live their healthiest, most authentic lives through the stories of other women. And a big part of that for me is that I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what I loved about being a woman. I had no idea what it was to be a woman. And now I get to learn from incredible women like you and some of the others on the podcast, and men, which I never thought men would teach me what I love about being a woman. Did not realize how important the masculine was in that balance. So I would love to know what you love about being a woman and what you're proud of as the woman that you are today.
I love the depth of intuition, the emotional connection and intelligence, that we have this ability of just innately having this creative power within us. We get to birth children, which is an amazing gift in and of itself. And that same energy we can use to birth and create our business and birth other things. And so I just love that creative, intuitive power that we have. And I love the depth of being able to have both sides, like that soft dance of that softness and the strength, being able to be in your power and being a strong in that leadership, and then also being able to be in that soft, surrendered space, that a beautiful, I don't know, I just feel like that's a beautiful aspect of being a woman, that polarity, holding that polarity of both. And yeah, I think for me too, just tapping into that creative energy and channeling that wisdom for myself and others is just something that I love. It's part of my womanhood, I suppose. And then when it comes to what I'm proud of, I just really proud of where, I think twofold. My daughter, my relationship with my daughter is so important to me. It was like doing the work that we've done and then being able to do that together, that healing, really seeing that shift of both of us go through such a deep level of healing and trust and bonding is something that I'm really proud of. And having the courage to just go after my dreams and do my business, even though, at the face of it, I didn't really have anyone cheering me on or believing in me that I could really talk to about it. So it felt like a very solo road for a long time, that I had to really dig into that resilience within myself to just know that I was meant for this. I was meant for this, even if it didn't make logical sense to anybody else, and to be able to see it through, and then now be able to get the feedback from so many students, and watching them turn around and shift their lives and do their business and do their healing work. And I just feel like seeing that ripple effect just feels really, really good to know that, having known that I had the courage to do that, which then in turn gave a lot of other women a lot of courage to do the same. So that's powerful.
Yeah, that is very powerful. Oh my goodness. And this whole episode for me has been so valuable. I've had so many aha moments that I haven't shared out loud, but I may in my reflection. But I've had so many aha moments, and it's been such a pleasure to chat. Please tell the listeners where they can find you and how they can work with you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me as well. I just love what you're offering in the world. It's been wonderful. My business is called Soul Success Unleashed. So soulsuccessunleashed.com. You can see there's tons of free articles and blogs and things on that site, as well as a lot of courses and things if you want to go deeper in that. I have a wonderful free gift I'd love to offer your audience, which is called the 4-Day Amplify Your Clairvoyance, Channeling, and Healing Abilities series. And this literally could be something I could easily charge at least $500 for. There's over probably more hours of content, at least 6 hours of content of video trainings, tangible things that you can practice and take into effect, really cultivate your connection to your intuition, to your angels and guides, activate your healing energy, develop your clairvoyance, understand your channeling. And then there's a lot of guided activations that are really powerful as well. So I hope you'll, if you're interested in that, we also talk a lot about being highly sensitive and how to not be energetically overwhelmed. So I think it's a really powerful series that I would love to share with your guests. And yeah, you can find me Facebook, and I'm also leading destination retreats now. We have one to Egypt coming up, and I'm looking at the dolphins soon. So, you can check all that out on my website, and I'll put the links in the show notes for you to share as well.
Oh, that would be amazing. I'm like, I'm signing up. I'm doing 6 hours of this. It's exactly what I need right now. Oh my goodness. If you are interested in connecting with Jen, I will include in the episode description and across socials links and ways you can do that. So if you haven't already, head on over to Spotify and Instagram and follow the Skin I'm In podcast to be the first to know when new episodes drop. Thank you so much, Jen, for being a guest on the Skin I'm In podcast.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Oh, do I have the tingles reflecting on this episode? Honestly, what a conversation. And, the more I think about it, the more it's coming up for me just how important it was for me to learn that my intuition doesn't come as a whisper. It shows up in my body as resistance, like my muscles tense. I might shake a little, like around my core. Sometimes I don't want certain people near me or even touching me. It's a deep, visceral discomfort that I experience. And for years, I ignored it. I thought that I must be, my self esteem is low or I lack confidence and I'm afraid of whatever. But the truth is, my body was like, get away from this person, say no to this job, say no to this deal, don't buy this house, all the things. So many times I can tell you, my body was like, girl, leave it. And I didn't leave it. And I made a really bad decision. But now, the more I listen to it, the louder it gets, the clearer it gets, the more I feel it in my body. It is so deep. And so I encourage you to work out how your intuition speaks to you. It's not the same for all of us. And so I think sometimes we miss the signs that our intuition is talking to us. You've just really got to work out how it's talking to you. One of the other things I really appreciated about this conversation is Jen's perspective on doing her healing work for her daughter. That really hit home. These conversations keep coming up for me at the moment, that thing around motherhood. And lately I've been sitting with the impact of motherhood on a woman's psyche and soul work, and it is no small thing. And to be clear, I absolutely honor the path of those who choose not to have children. There are so many ways to give birth: businesses, art, ideas, movement. All of it counts. All of it is sacred, especially when that work is rooted in self-awareness and healing. Whatever your path, I'll always be in your corner, encouraging you to find your way to wholeness. And I believe our greatest teacher in that journey is intuition, learning how it speaks to you and how to use it as a compass in your life. Jen offered a brilliant practice in this episode. Start small, ask your intuition to guide you in the little things consistently. That way, when the bigger decision rolls in, your inner knowing is already trained, trusted, and it is ready to lead. And here's something beautiful for all of you. As Jen mentioned, she's gifting my listeners a free 4-day activation masterclass series to help amplify your clairvoyance, channeling, and healing abilities while releasing fear and judgment. I've linked it in the episode description. Check it out, play with it. I certainly am. See what opens up for you and let me know what shifts. With gratitude and grace, have a wonderful day.